and welcome to our talk show. I'm going to introduce my guest to you. Before I do that, I want to remind you that in September 2015, world leaders gathered together in New York and they were discussing the global development goals, which is commonly known as the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, Kenya is one of the signatory countries to Sustainable Development Goals, and Sustainable Development Goals have 17 goals, 169 targets, and over 200 indicators. Now, today I'm joined with very good friends of ours, and they are running amazing initiatives in this country. The Education for Sustainable Development has been part of the government agenda to make sure that education is sustainable. But not only is sustainable, but also our schools are friendly for our children, accessible, affordable, and it works to the benefit of contributing to our economies. So today I'm joined by individuals who are running initiatives akin to that, and I will start by introducing Dr. Christine. Dr. Christine, maybe you can introduce yourself to our viewers.
I'm Dr. Christine. I work with the Ministry of Education, stationed at Kenya Education Management Institute. Currently, I'm the one in charge of Education for Sustainable Development activities in the institute.
All right, thank you so much, Daktari. Yes, Mr. Khan, maybe you can introduce yourself to our viewers.
Hi, viewers. I'm Charles Kado. I work with Access Education International, which has grown from children government. The children government was formed in our schools way back in 2011. In 2014, we had national leaders elected. The young men and women are now out, and we have recruited them to form the Access Education International Sustainable Leaders. And we have formed ministries around the 17 sustainable development goals. Yeah. So we have a minister in each of those ministries.
Thank you so much. Now, maybe you're wondering, what are these ministers of these goals? These are champions. These are individuals who are championing for each goal. Goal number 1 is no poverty, no hunger. Goal number 2, all the way to life on land, peace and justice, and partnership. Now, what we have here is a very good practical example of what collaboration can do. Dr. Christine, with the Ministry of Education, is championing the realization of sustainable development goals through education. Maybe you can start by telling us, what is Education for Sustainable Development Goals or development? When did it start, and what do they mean in a practical sense?
Well, thank you very much. When we talk about Education for Sustainable Development, I don't want to take you very far away. I want to take you to a nearer place. In 2008, Education for Sustainable Development started gaining some dominance in the world, and it wasn't taken to be in the line of education as such. It was more of in the line of environment. But as days go by, in 2017, here in Kenya, we came up with a policy for Education for Sustainable Development for the Ministry of Education. So that is what I will be talking about. Education for Sustainable Development according to the Ministry of Education in Kenya. Yes. Now, when we talk about Education for Sustainable Development, we have 3 things here that we have to look at keenly. The first one is the word education. The second one is the word sustainable. The third one is the word development. And usually I like discussing Education for Sustainable Development backwards. You start with development. What is development? Development means something that is progressing with time, something that has no end. So something that is building with time. And when we come to sustainability, we are talking about the ability to have this thing rolling down through and through, from one generation to another. So that we are thinking about what we are doing today to be able to enable our children and grandchildren to manage their own lives when we are not there. So when we come now to education, you add to sustainable and development, we are talking about learning, education that will enable us to enable our children and grandchildren to manage their lives thereafter without us, so that they will not be cursing us, that my mother did this mistake or my grandmother did this mistake. If it were not for what my mother did, then I couldn't be suffering. Yeah, like so. So when we talk about education for sustainable development, we are talking about education that enables us to meet our needs today without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs.
Wow.
I hope you understand.
Yeah, I do get you. I get you. Education is such a complex thing, and I'm glad that sustainability is being factored in education and development. I think Africa is still grappling with, the sector of education, and I'm very happy that you're doing something about it. Maybe I can ask, Mr. Kind of, in your own context of working with access education, what would you say is the paramount feature that makes a school friendly for our children? Because Dr. Christine, myself, we are very passionate about making this education sustainable. But we want to hear from you. Are we in the right track? Or do you think there's something about accessibility that we need to be educated about?
I think that's the common factor, because we are all here on education.
Yeah.
The children government is an offshoot of child-friendly schools. The UN, as well, in all the conventions, has always stressed on the voice of the child. The learner is the shoe wearer in the school, and the children leaders under the children government were actually elected to carry the voice of the children, the learners. The voice was in a way strong because as per now, the child-friendly school measures, there are 5 components that every school should assess should measure up to. And the child's voice matters most. The measurements is determined by the child-friendliness of the classrooms, the child-friendliness of the school, the health promoting school, equity and equality, the partnership, all that. And more so, how does this child gain or feel gaining education in this school?
Yeah.
So if they come in and communicate to all the stakeholders on their perspective, then it helps the government be able to provide that human rights based quality education.
It's a rights-based approach that engages the voice of the children. Yeah, I think that's looking at it from that perspective, the education for sustainable development takes into keen consideration that the children and the school as a community are stakeholders in the process of sustainability.
Exactly.
Could you explain to us, what are these fundamental elements? Does it have elements or fundamental pillars? Or when you talk about it, what does it envision? Education for sustainable development.
Well, when you're talking about education for sustainable development, there are 5 principles that we look at first. And the first principle is learning to know. In this sense, we are talking about the cognitive aspect of learning. That this child has to understand what is happening around him. And that is why we have the academic part of it, where they have to go to class and be taught by teachers. In the process, they will be learning to know. And then there is the aspect of learning to be. And this is very powerful when it comes to education for sustainable development. Because learning to be now speaks about the passion, the heart, the feelings that this child has known. And what he has known, he has to bring it down to the heart. So learning to be that which they are learning. If it is about values, we are talking about being responsible. We want this child to connect with that value of responsibility and appreciate the value so that they can learn to do. So coming down to the action, doing what they believe they know. So beyond the three, we have the fourth one, which is learning to live together. So it is very crucial in education for sustainable development for our children to learn to live together with other people in the society, to learn to live together with animals, to learn to live together with the trees and everything that surrounds them. And then finally, we have the fifth one, which is about learning to transform oneself and the society. So education for sustainable development is basically about transformation. If there is no transformation, then you cannot talk about sustainability. Because transformation has to touch the heart, it has to touch the hands, it has to touch the head. So the three H, the head, the heart, and the hands, they all must be involved in the process of transformation. And then apart from that, when we are talking about education for sustainable development, there are principles that we call the 7 R's of sustainability that we also must highlight.
Maybe before we come to the 7 R's, I want to clarify this for our viewers that education for sustainable development, and I'm just echoing what you say, it encompasses a situation where the learners must learn to know.
Exactly.
So that they receive knowledge.
Yes.
And this knowledge must be the right knowledge,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Then it goes to the learning to be
accepted in the heart.
To accept it,
Yeah.
so that they are part of what they have learned.
Yes.
So if they have learned that they need to take care of the environment,
yes.
then it should be visible from their value perspectives that I am an environmentalist. It should be who they are.
Yes.
Then it moves from there to
the hands,
to being able to do it. So education for sustainable development says it is not enough to know. It is not enough to believe. If you believe it, then do it. Then do it, right? Then it goes from just doing it, because you could be doing it alone, doing it somewhere. Now it goes to, can you learn to be with others? Work together with others? So can you now do what you've learned with others? Then I like the last one, which was
transforming oneself and the society.
So you take the society as your school, and you go out there and you show them transformation with the intention of working together with them, right? I like that a lot. You want to say something?
Yeah, because that's where again we come in as Access Education International, where we train now the youth leaders. Because every school has a children council who we mentor, and we take them through what we call ideation process. They draw their school, they mark the areas they are very happy at, and the areas they are not so happy at, and they give results.
Assembly is one of the areas they are not happy.
They could even draw, they could even draw what Dr.Christine said. They are happy in the garden, maybe they are happy in the classroom, they read their results, maybe they are not happy in at the toilet, or even at times they draw they are not happy in the classroom. And once they give the results, they participate in the running of the schools, and they can easily tell the school administrator, we are not happy here because of.
So it's more of a resource mapping within the context of their school, like they're mapping the resources they have,
not
their
the
value,
resource, but the feeling of the learners towards them getting that human rights-based quality education. Because once you know what the children are feeling, if they are not happy in the classroom,
then you need to do something about that.
So that the education that you are giving becomes relevant to the
And I think that's where I like the way that marries in with what is trying to do is like, and for me as an advocate of ESD, I think one of the passion I have is once you discover you're not happy here and you're happier here, what can you now do about it? Because now it transfers the responsibility of transformation to the individual, while giving him the capacity to work with the community, right? To work with the community, right?
It's actually some sort of symbiotic relationship. Because it should process whatever, if it's the ESG program, you get feedback from the children and take corrective measures in the making advances.
And in essence, for us to succeed in mainstreaming education for sustainable development in schools or in all learning institutions, the aspect of learner-friendly institutions is very key. Yeah, because in a learner-friendly institution, we are looking at the character of the child, we are looking at the character of the parent, we are looking at the character of the teacher, we are looking at the character of the support staff, everybody that surrounds the learner. So if that's all those people provide an environment that the child or the learner can accept, then it's very easy for the learner to do the right things in the society. Yeah.
And I see the relation. Before you add, I would love us to, because we have some young learners inside here. One of the things that we would ask them to do is to do an analysis of their head, heart, hands action, so that they are able to be ambassadors of, accessibility and transformation in the sector. I wanted you to tell us the 7. What did you call them? 7 something? Yes, 7 R's. And young men who are watching, what we are saying is that we want you to get the 7 R's and then put them in the context of head, heart, and hands. And then I want you to picture that those hands are your hands for your practical engagement, and share with us what areas that she's talked about that you feel is the most strategic for your engagement, right? So take us through the 7 R's.
Yeah, before I get to the 7 R's, initially we talked about the pillars. Yes. I cannot move to the 7 R's before talking about the 3 pillars.
Take us through.
Yeah, the 3 pillars of sustainability. We have the economic pillar, the social pillar, and the environmental pillar. In that, when you're doing something like planting trees, like we usually say, oh, I am doing something sustainable, I'm planting trees. That is an environmental activity. You are enhancing the environment. You've not touched the economic pillar, you've not touched the social pillar. And therefore, you cannot call that sustainability. That is just about the environment. Then we have the economic pillar. The economic pillar whereby we have to look at what you're doing, how is it helping to bring in some income or to cut on some costs. Yeah, so that then you can talk about this activity is economically viable. Yeah, then we have the social pillar. Now, the reason as to why the social pillar has to be there, we are looking at how is this activity benefiting the persons? How is it helping the community? How is it helping the society? How is it encouraging the people to be involved? not asking other people to do it. Yeah. So that now brings me to the 7 R's of sustainability. The first R.
Could you say again in just listing?
Yes.
So there is the social,
the economic, and the environment.
So the social deals with the person and the people within the society. And then the economic deals with the income generation and sustainability of, Then the environment is making sure that now you are engaged in the right environmental practices.
Yeah. And then when you're talking about the environmental pillar, it's not just about plants, trees, no. We are talking about everything that surrounds you. The animals on the land, the animals in the air, the vegetation on land. We are talking about the animals in the sea, and all that God created. So that is what goes into the environment. And when we're talking about the social pillar, we are not just talking about people. We are looking at aspects of politics, good politics. We are looking at the aspects of culture, and so on and so forth. History. You understand? Anything that concerns human beings, that goes into the social pillar. Yeah. Now,
take us to the 7.
I love education for sustainable development so much, in that if you tell me to talk about education for sustainable the whole week, I have something to say about education for sustainable development. But for now, let me look at the 7 R's of sustainability. The first one is refuse. Just refuse. Just say no. I mean, if it is bad, it is bad. If it is wrong, it is just wrong. Like now, we are talking about COVID-19. What is it that we can refuse? We can refuse the disease. Yeah, you can refuse the disease. How best can you refuse this disease? By simply doing the right things. Yeah, doing what the government is telling us to do. Wash hands, sanitize, use chalk, social distancing. Ensure if you're doing all those things in the right way, then you will be refusing the disease. Now, when we come to practically what we do in education for sustainable development, you can refuse to waste. You can refuse to use plastics. For instance, when we are in a conference, we have this habit of having water bottles, 500 mils. Can we refuse to use those 500 mils bottles? Why? Because the 500 mils bottles, when there are many, they pollute the environment. Why can't you just refuse and say no? Instead of using the 500 mils, let us just have one dispenser, and each one of us has their own glass, which can be reused. Yeah, so that we can only have one big bottle, which we can now say, okay, we have reduced on the use of the many small bottles. Now that takes me to the second R, which is reduce. If you cannot refuse completely, then reduce. By using one big bottle, it means you have reduced. Yeah? If you are in an environment where you have to use paper, instead of printing on one side of the paper, why can't you reduce by printing onto both sides? Why can't you reduce by using the smaller font instead of big fonts? So that is what we are talking about. And then that brings me to the third one, which is reuse. Now the big bottle, remember I talked about the big bottle. That big bottle can now be reused and become a garden. Yeah? So they connect from one to another. So if you can now take the big bottle and put some soil in it and plant some sukuma wiki, then you will be reusing the big bottle to do something good to yourself and even to the environment. And then now, moving to the fourth one, which is now recycle. What you cannot reuse can be recycled. When we talk about recycling, it means it can be turned to a different form that can be used again in a very good way, in a very healthy way. For example, the waste food that we throw from the kitchen, can it be recycled? Oh yes, it can be recycled. It can become organic manure. And this organic manure can be used in the gardens, in your kitchen garden, to give you healthy vegetables. So you understand? So already we are at number 4. And after number 4, it comes down to number 5, which is repair. Repair. What can we repair? We can repair so many things. In education for sustainable development, we don't believe in throwing away things. If, for example, it is a chair or there is a table in your office that has a mistake, what do you do about that? You don't put it aside and buy another one. Take a hammer, take some nails, and repair. The reason as to why we have our children coming out as irresponsible children as they grow up is because they skipped that stage of repairing things. For example, when our children go to school, if a button gets off their shirt, the second button gets off, what do? They put it in the dustbin. And then they make a call home, telling the mom or the dad, Mom, I don't have enough uniform. And because we want to look like we are very caring, what do? We send money. They buy new ones. The other one has been thrown in the dustbin. Instead of teaching our children to stitch, that you can repair this shirt, you can use it again after you have repaired it. And the 6th R is rethink. Before you use that bottle of water, rethink. What if I used a glass instead? Before you do anything, before you throw anything away like it is that, rethink. Can it be reused? Can it be recycled? Can it be repaired? How else can I make use of this? And finally, the last R is reconnect. Reconnect with yourself. Reconnect with the people around you. Reconnect with your Creator, which is very critical. We need to understand that we human beings are spiritual beings. There is no way we can run away from it. That at every given time, if you want to progress in life, you must reconnect with your Creator. So that is why every morning we encourage everyone to rethink about your relationship with God. Rethink about your relationship with the people that surround you. Rethink about your relationship with the environment, everything that surrounds you. How can you reconnect? How can you forgive? How can you start moving on together for the purpose of being comfortable in the society where you are?
Awesome. That was a mouthful, right? Those are 7. I feel like I almost just started dreaming about what I want to do. So anyway, I want to get questions from you for access education and for Africa for SDGs and for education for sustainable development. And like the main reason why I'm a big fan of ESD is because young people are the biggest investment for sustainability. Right now, as we are talking, Africa has a median age of 19 years, 19.4. Gambia is the country with the youngest median age in the world at 14 years old, meaning that in Gambia, the probability of meeting 14-year-olds is the highest above every other age demographics that you can meet. Africa is going to experience about 600 or 305 thereabouts according to UNICEF, more births. So we are not talking about a younger generation that is just going to sit still, but we are going to experience an explosion of population. So it means that we have to invest right. And education for sustainable development and access education are the right places, because what happens is we are dealing with the people who will drive the sustainability agenda and realize it, right? So at Africa for SDGs, we are making sure that you activate conversations that can help you innovate, see your world differently. It's the head, heart thing. See how you know your world differently, then think differently, and then act differently. So when you're acting, implement things that if Dr. Christine would come or my friend Mr. Khan would come and we see it and he has any capacity, it can be scaled. Remember, scaling is the only way that we can improve a large number of individuals using an individual's idea. Now I want to open up for questions there. Is there any question from you guys before?
Before you come to the questions, I want to thank Dr. Christine. The Access Education International Sustainable Youth Leadership is a product of ESP, and in so many forms. And we need to know because the young leaders are elected at the primary level, and the values that you have explained very well, is actually instill and really instilling in them the same values, and they grow up as leaders and pick up now to be ambassadors to these SDGs. Then you realize we are producing leaders with all these values. So there's a very strong connection of the two. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Is there any question from any of us? Any question that you want to ask? Any question? I'm going to ask a question. Yes,